What Men Live By. Chapter 1. Simon a Shoemaker. In old Russia, there was once an old shoemaker named Simon. He and his wife were not rich. One day in the late fall, Simon left his house to buy a winter coat. He and his wife needed a new coat to share. He had only 3 rubles, but he also planned to visit some of his customers on the way. They owed him 5 rubles for work he had already done. Simon went to several customers' houses, but he could only collect about 20 kopecks. When the shoemaker went to the store to buy a coat, he did not have enough money. He asked if he could pay part of the money now and the rest later. But the shopkeeper said, "Bring all the money at once. You and I both know it is difficult to collect promised money." Simon felt frustrated. He spent the 20 kopecks on vodka and started walking home. Even though it was getting dark now, the vodka kept him warm. As Simon was walking, he came near a small church by the road. He saw something white behind the church. It looked like a man without clothes. Suddenly, Simon felt afraid. Robbers must have killed him and taken his clothes, Simon thought. I must hurry or they will catch me too. Simon hurried past the church. After a while, he looked back. What should I do? Thought Simon. If I go back there, he might kill me for my clothes. Even if he doesn't attack me, what can I do for him? So Simon ran down the road out of sight. At the top of the next hill, he suddenly stopped. What am I doing? Simon thought. The man could be dying. I should be ashamed of myself. Simon turned around and went back to the church. When Simon went behind the church, he saw a young man there. This young man was tall and healthy, but he looked afraid. He was very handsome with a kind face. Suddenly, Simon liked the young man. Simon took off his old jacket and put it around the young man's shoulders. Simon also had an extra pair of boots, which he gave to the young man. Can you walk? Asked Simon. The man stood up and looked kindly at Simon, but he did not speak. Why don't you talk? Where are you from? Asked Simon. The man replied with a calm and kind voice. I'm not from around here, he said. I thought so, said Simon. I know everyone in this area. How did you get here? I cannot say, replied the man. All I can say is that God is punishing me. Of course, said Simon. God rules all men. But if you have nowhere to go, come home with me and at least make yourself warm. As Simon walked home with the stranger, he worried about his wife. Martha, Simon's wife, heard Simon come into the house. She smelled vodka and also noticed that Simon did not have a winter coat. And who is this stranger he brought home? Martha thought. Another drunk he met in the bar? Martha was very disappointed. Martha, said Simon, let's have some supper if it's ready. Martha became very angry. You are late coming home, so the food is not ready. Not only are you late, but you don't have a coat. You spent all our money on vodka, and you bring a strange man home. He doesn't even have clothes of his own. I have no supper for drunks like you. That's enough, Martha, said Simon. He tried to explain himself, but she was too angry. I should never have married you, she said. What are we going to do this winter without a coat? And all you can do is bring drunken strangers to eat what little food we have? Then Martha looked at the stranger. She said, if he were a good man, he would not be naked. And you would tell me where he came from. That's what I'm trying to tell you, said Simon. He then told his wife how he met the young man. As Martha listened to her husband, she looked at the young man. He sat on the edge of the bench without moving. His hands were in his lap, and he looked down at the floor. He looked very pitiful. After Simon told his story, he said, Martha, don't you love God? When Martha heard these words, she had compassion for the stranger. She went back into the kitchen and got some tea and bread. She put them in front of the stranger. Eat if you want to, she said. As Martha looked at the young man eating, she did not feel angry anymore. She thought she could like this young man. Suddenly, the stranger looked up and smiled. A light seemed to come from his face. Thank you, he said. The stranger stayed and learned how to make shoes from Simon. He learned quickly and had great skill. He only told them that his name was Michael. Michael made shoes so well that many people came to Simon's shop. Soon, Simon and Martha had enough money for food and clothes. Chapter 2. Angel of the Earth. After 1 year, a rich gentleman came to Simon's shop. He asked, "Who is the master shoemaker here?" "I am, sir," said Simon. "How can I help you?" The rich gentleman showed Simon a large piece of very fine leather. "Do you know what kind of leather this is?" "It's good leather, sir," said Simon. The gentleman laughed. "It is the best, you fool. I want you to make me a pair of boots that will last for 1 year. Can you do it?" Simon was afraid. He looked at Michael and asked, "Should we take this work?" Michael nodded his head. He seemed to be looking behind the rich gentleman, but no one was there. Suddenly, Michael smiled again. "What are you smiling at, you fool?" shouted the rich man. "You had better start working. I will come back in 2 days." Michael worked on the gentleman's boots the next day. When Simon checked his work, he shouted in surprise. "What have you done?" yelled Simon. "These are slippers, not boots." Suddenly there was a knock at the door. Simon opened it and saw the rich man's servant. "The gentleman's wife has sent me about the boots," said the servant. Simon was afraid. "My master does not need them," continued the servant. "He is dead. My lady wants you to make slippers for his funeral." Simon was amazed. Silently, Michael picked up the slippers he had made and gave them to the servant. The servant bowed and said, "Thank you, Master Shoemaker." Michael had now lived with Simon for 6 years. One day, he stood looking out the window. Simon was curious. Michael had never before been interested in the outside world. "Look," said Martha, "here comes a woman with 2 daughters. One of the daughters has a bad leg." The woman came into the shoemaker's shop. "Good day to you," said Simon. "What can we do for you?" "I want leather shoes for these girls," said the woman. "We can do that," said Simon. He noticed that Michael was looking at the girls very closely. "How did this girl hurt her leg?" asked Simon. "Was she born that way?" "No," said the woman. "Her mother did that. I am not their real mother. These girls are the children of our neighbors. They are twins, born just about 6 years ago. Their father died 1 week before they were born, and their mother died right after she gave birth to them. As she died, she rolled on top of one of the girls and twisted the baby's leg. Since I just had a baby of my own, I was able to feed them. Unfortunately, my baby died. But I raised these 2 girls. Now I love them like they were my own." Martha said, "It is true that one may live without a father or mother, but one cannot live without God." Suddenly, a bright light filled the room. Everyone looked at Michael, who was the source of this light. He was smiling and looking up at the heavens. Michael put down his tools and took off his apron. He bowed to Simon and Martha. "God has forgiven me," he said. "I am sorry to leave you, but I must go now." Simon said to Michael, "I can see now that you are not a common man, and I cannot keep you. But please, tell me your story if you can." Michael smiled at Simon. "I owe you an explanation at least. You see, 6 years ago, God punished me because I disobeyed him. He sent me to take the soul of a woman. This woman was the mother of the twins who were just here. When I came to her house, I saw the 2 newborn babies. The mother begged me not to take her soul. So I flew back to heaven and asked God to save her. God told me, 'Go back and take the mother's soul. Then you must learn 3 truths. First, learn what lives in man. Second, learn what is not given to man. Finally, learn what men live by. When you have learned these things, you may return to heaven.' So I flew back to the woman's cottage. I took her soul, and then I suddenly lost my wings. I fell to the earth. That is how you found me, Simon, naked and freezing behind the church." I was very lonely and afraid. I thought that you could not help me, but you came back and gave me your clothes. Then, when I came home with you, I was afraid of Martha. She seemed very angry, but she pitied me and offered what little food you had. Then I smiled because I had learned the first of God's truths. Love lives in men. Then, after a year, the rich gentleman visited us. I saw the angel of death behind him. The man was about to die, yet he wanted boots that would last for a year. Then I realized that men are not given the knowledge to know what they need. I smiled then because I had learned the second truth. Just now, I learned the third truth when that woman arrived. She loved these children, even though they were not hers. I could see that God lived in her. Then I understood that men live by love. So I smiled for the third time. Michael seemed to grow taller. A bright light shone from his whole body. Simon and Martha could not look directly at him. Wings grew from his body. Michael's voice grew stronger and loud. I now understand that men live by love alone. He who has love is with God, and God is in him, for God is love. Then the roof of the shop opened and a ray of light fell down from heaven. Michael spread his wings and flew up into the light. Simon and Martha covered their eyes and fell to the ground. When Simon opened his eyes again, the roof was closed. There was no one in the shop but he and his wife.